The ceremonial blade stopped 3 inches from Marcus Cole's throat when Princess Vaelith screamed. Not a scream of fear or warning, something far more primal. The High Adjudicator's hand froze mid-swing, his violet eyes widening as the princess collapsed to her knees on the polished obsidian floor, her silver hair spilling around her like moonlight on dark water. "What name did you speak?" she demanded, her voice cracking. "What name?" The adjudicator looked between them, confusion replacing his ceremonial composure. "I announce the condemned as is required, Your Highness. Marcus Cole of Earth, formerly of the Terran mining vessel, Cole." The word left her lips like a wound reopening. Tears, actual tears, something the Vaelithari supposedly could not produce, streamed down her angular face. Marcus Cole. Marcus knelt in chains, bloodied from 3 days of interrogation, trying to understand why his name had broken this alien woman he'd never met. Around them, the 1,000 assembled nobles of the Vaelithari court shifted uneasily. This was supposed to be a simple execution, a human caught in restricted space, made an example of. Nothing more. "You know this creature, Princess?" Lord Severon's voice dripped with barely concealed disgust. He stood at the Emperor's right hand, his position as first consul giving weight to every word. "This human?" Vaelith rose slowly, and Marcus saw something dangerous flash behind her grief. "Remove his chains." "Your Highness, the Emperor has decreed," I said. "Remove them." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Emperor Kael'thar, ancient and unreadable on his throne of woven starlight, raised one clawed hand. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. Marcus's wrists burned as the energy bindings dissipated. He didn't stand. Couldn't, really. 3 days without food and whatever they'd done to his left leg had seen to that. The princess crossed the distance between them. Up close, she was terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. 7 feet of pale blue skin, eyes like fractured amethyst, and features too sharp to be human, yet somehow achingly familiar. She knelt before him, heedless of the gasps from the assembled court. "Your father," she whispered, low enough that only he could hear. Was he David Cole, a human who served on the diplomatic frigate Aurelius? Marcus felt the world tilt. His father had died when he was 12, officially, in an accident during a classified diplomatic mission. The Aurelius had been redacted from every record he'd ever tried to access. "Yes," he managed. "How do you—" "He saved my life." Her hand touched his face, gentle as falling ash. "And I killed him for it." The court erupted. Lord Severin's voice cut through the chaos. "This is absurd. Whatever delusion has seized the princess, it cannot override imperial law. The human violated the sacred boundary. The punishment is death." "The punishment," Vaelith said, rising to face him, "is at the Emperor's discretion." "Father." All eyes turned to the throne. Emperor Kael'thar had not moved, but something shifted in his expression. Curiosity, perhaps, or calculation. "Explain yourself, daughter." Vaelith straightened, and Marcus saw the princess transform into something else. A politician. A survivor. Someone who had learned to navigate these waters long before she'd learned to walk. 15 cycles ago, during the Rift Insurgency, I was captured by rebel forces. They intended to use me as leverage against the throne. One human, a junior diplomatic attaché named David Cole, disobeyed direct orders from his superiors to attempt a rescue. She paused, and Marcus saw her hands trembling at her sides. He succeeded. But in doing so, he violated Vaelithari's sacred space. He touched me, carried me, without permission. Under our law, the penalty was death, which was administered, the Emperor said flatly, which I administered. Personally, as was my right as the offended party. Vaelith's voice didn't waver, but tears still traced lines down her cheeks. He knelt before me just as his son kneels now. He didn't beg, didn't plead. He only asked one thing, that I remember his name, so that someone in the galaxy would know what he'd done, who he was. Marcus couldn't breathe. His father's last moments, he'd spent 20 years imagining them, and now, I told him I would forget him before his body was cold. Vaelith's laugh was broken glass. I was young, proud, terrified that showing mercy would be seen as weakness. So I took his life, and I told myself I had done the righteous thing. "You did," Lord Severin said coldly. "You upheld our law. I murdered the only being who ever treated my life as worth more than my title." Vaelith turned back to Marcus. "I have not forgotten his name. Not for a single day. And I will not compound my sins by killing his son." Marcus finally found his voice. "Why?" The word scraped out of his damaged throat. If you felt this way, why not say something? Change the law, because I was a coward. Simple. Devastating. Because admitting I was wrong meant admitting he died for nothing. It was easier to suffer in silence than face what I'd done. The Emperor leaned forward. You make a compelling, emotional argument, daughter. But emotion does not govern this court. The human violated our space. What would you have me do? Ignore our laws for sentiment? I would have you grant me the right of salvage. The court fell utterly silent. Marcus didn't know what that meant, but from the expressions around him, it was significant. Lord Severin looked like he'd swallowed something poisonous. You cannot be serious, the first consul hissed. I claim this human as salvage from the boundary. His life, his service, his fate, all fall under my authority, until I release him or death takes him. This is within the law. The right of salvage hasn't been invoked in 300 cycles. It has never been abolished. Vaelith faced her father. I am within my rights. Emperor Kael'thar studied his daughter for a long moment. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but something adjacent to amusement. The right of salvage is granted. The human Marcus Cole is remanded to Princess Vaelith's custody. This execution is concluded. Without execution. He rose. Court is dismissed. As the nobles filed out, their whispers a tide of scandal. Marcus felt hands helping him stand. Vaelith supported him on one side, a guard on the other. Why? He asked again. Because nothing else made sense. She looked at him with those fractured eyes, and he saw something there that would take him months to understand. Hope buried beneath decades of guilt. Because your father asked me to remember his name, and I finally understood why. The princess's chambers were nothing like Marcus had expected. He anticipated cold grandeur, more obsidian floors and starlight thrones. Instead, he found himself in rooms that felt almost human. Warm lighting, actual books on actual shelves. A window that looked out on what appeared to be a garden, though the plants were nothing he recognized. You're surprised. Marcus turned, too fast. His leg buckled, and he caught himself on a chair that probably cost more than his entire ship. Careful. Vaelith was there in an instant, steadying him. Her hand on his arm was cool, her grip stronger than it looked. Your injuries haven't been treated yet. The court physician is on her way. Why bother? The words came out harsher than he intended. 3 days of torture, a death sentence, and then this whiplash of mercy. He couldn't process it. If you wanted to assuage your guilt, you could have just let them kill me. Quick, clean, you'd get your closure either way. Her hand dropped. You think that's what this is? Guilt, isn't it? Partly. She moved to a low table, pouring liquid from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses. But guilt alone wouldn't have driven me to invoke the right of salvage. That's a declaration, Mr. Cole. It tells the entire court that I value you, a human. Enough to spend political capital protecting you. Severin will use this against me for years. Then why? She handed him a glass. The liquid inside was amber, smelling faintly of honey and something sharper beneath. Because for 15 years I've dreamed of your father's face. Every night. Without fail. She sat across from him, and for the first time, he saw the exhaustion beneath her composure. I told myself the dreams were punishment, deserved torment for what I'd done. But recently I've come to believe they were something else. What? A reminder that I had become exactly what I hated, a creature of law without conscience, tradition without mercy. She took a long drink, and then you appeared, kneeling where he once knelt, bearing his name, looking at me with his eyes. Marcus set down his untouched glass. I don't remember him well. I was 12 when he died. They told us it was an accident, mechanical failure during a routine mission. My mother never believed it, but there was nothing she could do. She died 3 years later. He swallowed. They said it was illness. I think it was grief. I'm sorry. Are you? You killed him. The words hung between them, sharp as any blade. Yes. Vaelith didn't flinch. I did. And I will spend whatever remains of my life trying to earn forgiveness I don't deserve. She met his eyes. But I won't pretend it didn't happen. I won't minimize it or explain it away. Your father died because of my cowardice, and nothing I do will change that. Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something. Recognition, perhaps. This woman wasn't asking him to absolve her. She was simply present. Accountable. Real. What happens now? He asked. Now, you heal. The physician will treat your injuries. You'll be given quarters adjacent to mine. As my salvage, you're under my protection, but you're also bound to my service until I release you. Your servant. Officially. A ghost of something like humor crossed her face. In practice, I find that I have no idea what to do with you. The right of salvage was designed for claimed ships and cargo, not people. So, I'm cargo. You're a complication. She stood. One I choose to navigate. Rest now. We'll speak more tomorrow. She was nearly to the door when Marcus spoke again. He talked about you. My father. He didn't know why he said it. Didn't know if it was even true. But something in her posture, the way she carried her guilt like a physical weight, made him want to offer something. Vaelith stopped, but didn't turn. Before the mission, he said he was going to a world where the people were beautiful but cold, where honor mattered more than kindness. He said, Marcus searched his memories, fragments from a childhood that felt like another life. He said he hoped to find something there worth saving. When she turned, her eyes were wet again. Did he say if he found it? No, he never came home. She nodded once, slowly, then left without another word. The physician was ancient, older than the emperor, if that was possible, with 4 arms and skin like bark. She worked in silence, running instruments over Marcus's injuries that hummed with technology he couldn't begin to understand. The leg will heal, she said finally. The ribs as well. You humans are remarkably resilient for such fragile-looking creatures. She fixed him with an unreadable stare. You should know that what the princess did today has made her a target. Severin has opposed her claim to succession for decades. This gave him ammunition. Succession? Marcus frowned. She's in line for the throne. She is the only heir. The emperor has no sons, and our law, until recently, forbade female rulers. Vaelith has spent her entire life fighting for the right to claim what should already be hers. The physician packed away her instruments. Many believe she is too soft, too influenced by alien ideas. Today's display will confirm their suspicions. Why are you telling me this? The old woman paused at the door. Because David Cole was my patient once, after the princess's rescue. I treated his injuries before. She trailed off. He asked me to deliver a message if I ever had the chance. I never thought I would, but here you are. Marcus's heart hammered. What message? He said. Tell my son that kindness isn't weakness, and that the bravest thing anyone can do is stay soft in a hard world. She studied him. I don't know if you're the man he hoped you'd become, but I know the princess sees something in you that she hasn't seen in anyone since him. Don't waste it. She left. Marcus sat alone in the unfamiliar room, surrounded by alien comforts, and thought about his father's last message. About kindness. About staying soft. About whether he could extend that softness to the woman who had taken everything from him. 3 days passed. Marcus's body healed faster than expected. The physician's technology was light years beyond anything he'd known. His leg, which should have required months of rehabilitation, was merely stiff. His ribs no longer screamed with every breath. He saw Vaelith only briefly. Formal meetings where she explained the court's structure, the political landscape, his role as her salvage. She was distant in these moments, professional. The raw emotion of their first encounters seemed locked away behind duty. But he noticed things. The way she lingered by his door after their meetings, as if reluctant to leave. The small gifts that appeared in his quarters, a translation device, clothes that actually fit, books about human history in the Vaelithari archives. A handwritten note with each one, so you may better understand your situation. On the 4th day he went looking for her. He found her in the garden he'd seen from his window. Not a garden at all, he realized, but a memorial. Crystalline structures rose from the dark soil, each one pulsing with faint light. There are 3,412 of them, Vaelith said without turning. She stood before one crystal, smaller than the others. One for every Vaelithari who died in the Rift insurgency. This one, she touched it gently, is for my brother. He was killed in the first wave. I'm sorry. Don't be. I barely knew him. Her voice was flat. We were not raised together. Royal children rarely are. Competition for succession begins early. It's considered unwise to let potential rivals form attachments. She turned to face him. I met him twice before he died. I felt nothing when I learned of his death. Only relief that there was one less obstacle. And now I attend his memorial every cycle and wonder what kind of monster I was bred to be. She gestured at the crystals. Your father should have a place here. He died saving one of us. He deserves to be remembered. Marcus moved to stand beside her. This close, he could see the fine lines around her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands that she fought to control. You are not a monster, he said quiet. Monsters don't regret. They don't change. How do you know I've changed? Because you're trying to. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her arm. Because you invoked ancient law and risked your entire position to save a stranger. Because you tend a memorial for a brother you barely knew, trying to become someone who would have mourned him. Her eyes met his, and he saw fear there. Vulnerability. Things he suspected she showed no one. I don't deserve your forgiveness. No? He agreed. But that's not what I'm offering. Not yet, maybe not ever. He let his hand fall. What I'm offering is... what? A chance. To know you as you are now. Not the woman who killed my father. The woman who wishes she hadn't. Vaelith was silent for a long moment. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. That may be the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. My father told me kindness isn't weakness. Something broke in her expression. Not grief this time, but something more complicated. Hope and terror and wonder all tangled together. He told me the same thing, she whispered. The night before I killed him, I thought he was mocking me. He wasn't. He never mocked anyone. Marcus felt tears threatening. The first he'd allowed since this nightmare began. He just believed in people. Even when they didn't deserve it. Even when they were about to take his life. Especially then. They stood in the memorial garden as alien suns set beyond the crystal spires, and for the first time since his father's death, Marcus felt something other than loss. He felt possibility. The assassin came on the 12th night. Marcus didn't hear the door open, didn't hear anything until a hand clamped over his mouth, and a blade pressed against his throat. Make no sound, a voice hissed, and your death will be quick. He moved on instinct, training from a lifetime of rough ports and rougher crews. His elbow connected with something solid. The hand slipped, and he rolled off the bed just as the blade sliced through the pillow where his head had been. The room was dark, but his attacker was darker, a shadow among shadows, moving with inhuman speed. Vaelithari, certainly, but not anyone he'd seen at court. Who sent you? Marcus circled, keeping furniture between them. Does it matter? You'll be dead either way. The assassin lunged. Marcus barely dodged, feeling the blade kiss his arm. In the mining crews, he'd learned to fight, not with skill, but with desperation. He grabbed a chair, swung it hard. The assassin batted it aside like paper. Pathetic. The shadow resolved into features. Male, young, eyes burning with contempt. This is what the princess has chosen to protect. A weak, mewling. The door exploded inward. Vaelith stood in the frame and she was terrifying. Gone was the composed princess of the court. This was something ancient, primal. Her eyes blazed with violet fire, and in her hand was a blade that seemed forged from frozen lightning. Kalos, she said, her voice deadly calm. Step away from him. The assassin, Kalos, grinned. Your Highness, I was wondering when you'd arrive. He pressed his blade closer to Marcus's throat. One move and your pet human bleeds out. One move, Vaelith replied. And I show you why our ancestors called us gods. Pretty words, but we both know. He never finished. What happened next was too fast for Marcus to follow. One moment Vaelith was at the door. The next, she was between them, her blade buried in Kalos's chest. The assassin gasped, looked down at the wound with something like surprise, and crumpled. Vaelith, are you hurt? She was at his side instantly, hands searching for injuries. Your arm. A scratch. Nothing, nothing. Her laugh was wild, edged with hysteria. You were nearly killed. Because of me. Because I brought you into this world. Because someone sent an assassin. That's not your fault. Of course it's my fault. She pulled away, pacing. Savran, it must be. Or one of his allies. They think removing you will destabilize me, make me look weak. She stopped, staring at the body on the floor. I killed him. I killed another one. Marcus saw her starting to spiral. The guilt, the memories, the weight of everything she carried threatening to crush her. He did the only thing he could think of. He took her hand. You saved my life, he said firmly. Just like my father saved yours. Is that so terrible? She looked at their joined hands, then at him. In her eyes he saw the war between trained distance and desperate need. I can't. Her voice broke. I can't lose anyone else to my mistakes. I can't. You won't. He pulled her closer, tentative, giving her every chance to retreat. She didn't. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. You should. You should run as far from me as possible. Find a ship. Return to your human worlds where you'll be safe. Safe? Despite everything, he laughed. I was a mining crew reject with no family and no future. I crossed into your space because I was chasing a distress signal, one that turned out to be bait. My entire life before this was just surviving. Day to day. No purpose. No connection. Her brow furrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying that for the first time in 20 years I feel like I matter. Like what I do means something. He cupped her face, wiping away tears she probably didn't realize she was shedding. You didn't trap me here, Vaelith. You gave me something I'd lost. A reason to stay. Marcus. I'm not my father. I can't replace him and I can't forgive you for him. Not yet. But I can choose to be here. I can choose to see who you're becoming instead of who you were. He rested his forehead against hers. If you'll let me. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, her arms came around him. Hesitant at first, then fierce. She held him like he might disappear, like he was the first solid thing she'd touched in years. I don't deserve this, she whispered against his shoulder. Probably not. But I'm not doing it for you. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I'm doing it for me. And for my father. Because he believed kindness could change the world. And I think, his voice cracked, I think he'd want me to believe it too. She kissed him. It wasn't passion, not yet. It was gratitude and grief and something new being born in the space between them. It was soft and fleeting and tasted like tears. When they parted, her eyes were clearer than he'd ever seen them. We need to deal with this, she said, glancing at the body. Sevran will deny involvement. The council will demand an investigation. And I intend to give them one. Steel crept back into her voice. Not the cold steel of the princess who had killed his father, but something warmer. Determination. Someone tried to take you from me. I'm going to find out who. And I'm going to make sure they never threaten either of us again. Marcus looked at this woman, this alien princess who had been his father's executioner and his own savior, and saw someone he wanted to stand beside. Then let's get started, he said. The investigation took 3 days. Marcus had expected bureaucracy, backroom dealings, the kind of political theater he'd glimpsed in the court. What he got instead was Vaelith transformed, a force of nature that tore through every obstacle in her path. She questioned servants, analyzed security recordings, traced Kalos's movements through the palace. She didn't sleep. Marcus stayed with her, partly because she asked, partly because he couldn't bear to leave her alone with her demons. On the 3rd night they found it, a payment authorization, hidden in encrypted files, tracing back not to Sevran, but to a lesser noble, Lord Terranth, a minor functionary who had quietly amassed power in the shadows. A proxy, Vaelith muttered, staring at the evidence. Sevran would never be foolish enough to leave a direct trail. But Terranth is his creature, has been for decades. Can you prove it? Not to the satisfaction of the council. But I don't need to prove it to them. She turned to face him, and there was something dangerous in her smile. I need to prove it to my father. The audience with the Emperor was private, just the 3 of them in a chamber that felt ancient and watchful. Marcus stood at Vaelith's side, uncertain of his place but unwilling to leave her. Emperor Kael'thar listened to his daughter's evidence without expression. When she finished, the silence stretched like a held breath. You accuse Lord Terranth of attempted murder, he said finally. An act that would implicate his patron as well. I accuse Lord Terranth of what the evidence shows. I leave interpretations to wiser minds than mine. Vaelith's voice was steady. But I also invoke the right of response. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You wish to duel him. I wish to resolve this matter in a way that cannot be buried by politics. Terranth accepted payment to kill someone under my protection. By our oldest laws, I may demand satisfaction. Dueling has been outlawed for 200 cycles. The law permits exceptions for matters of royal honor. Vaelith lifted her chin. My honor has been challenged. I will defend it, unless my emperor commands otherwise. Father and daughter stared at each other and Marcus saw something pass between them. Calculation, respect, perhaps even pride. You've changed, the emperor said quietly. The daughter I knew would have waited, schemed, found a safer path. The daughter you knew was afraid to fight for what she believed in. I'm tired of being afraid. Another long silence. Then, impossibly, the emperor smiled. Very well. The right of response is granted. But, Vaelith, his voice hardened, if you fall there will be no successor. Everything we've built ends. Then I'd better not fall. The duel took place at sunset, in a courtyard that had once been a killing ground. Lord Terranth was larger than Marcus expected, a warrior caste Vaelithari, bred for combat. He held his blade with the easy confidence of someone who had never lost. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said quietly, standing behind the ceremonial barrier. "There must be another way." "There isn't." Vaelith adjusted her grip on her blade. "This isn't just about the assassination. It's about everything. Every compromise I've made. Every time I let fear choose my path. If I can't stand against this, I don't deserve to lead anyone. You deserve. I deserve to prove myself." She turned to him and her expression softened. "Whatever happens, Marcus, thank you. For seeing me. For staying. I'm not going anywhere," he said, echoing her words from days before. "Win this, and I'll still be here. Lose, and..." He swallowed. "I'll find a way to honor what you started." She kissed him once, fierce and quick, then turned to face her opponent. The duel was brief and brutal. Terrenth was stronger, faster, more experienced. He pressed his advantage relentlessly, driving Vaelith back across the courtyard while the assembled court watched in tense silence. Marcus's hands clenched at his sides, every instinct screaming at him to intervene. But Vaelith fought like someone with nothing left to lose, which, Marcus realized, she was. Every strike was commitment, every dodge a hair's breadth from disaster. She took wounds that would have felled a human 3 times over, and kept coming. And then, in a moment that would replay in Marcus's dreams for years, Terrenth overextended. A killing blow aimed at Vaelith's heart that missed by inches. She spun inside his guard, her blade finding the gap in his armor, and drove it home. Lord Terrenth fell. The courtyard erupted, gasps, shouts, a wave of sound that meant nothing to Marcus because Vaelith was still standing, bloodied and trembling but alive. He was over the barrier before anyone could stop him, catching her as her legs gave out. "I did it," she whispered, blood on her lips. You did. You won." He pressed his forehead to hers. "You absolute terrifying wonderful." She laughed, or tried to. "Is this the part where you tell me kindness isn't weakness? This is the part where I tell you I love you." The words escaped before he could stop them. Her eyes widened. "Marcus, I know it's insane. I know we barely known each other. I know there's history between us that might never heal. But I watched you nearly die for what you believed in. And all I could think was..." His voice broke. "If I lose her now, I'll never forgive myself for not saying it." Vaelith raised one trembling hand to his face. "I don't deserve..." "Stop." He caught her hand, held it against his cheek. "Stop telling me what you deserve. Let me decide that for myself." She stared at him for a long moment. This human who had every right to hate her, who had chosen something else instead. "I love you too," she said finally. "I think I have since the moment you asked why. Since you gave me a chance I never earned." Around them, the court descended into chaos. Lord Sevron was shouting something about illegality. The Emperor was speaking to his advisors. Guards were rushing to secure the scene. None of it mattered. What mattered was this: 2 people, broken in different ways, choosing to build something new from the wreckage. What mattered was mercy given and received. What mattered was a name remembered, finally, the way it deserved to be. The wedding was held in the memorial garden. 3 cycles had passed since the duel. Enough time for Vaelith's wounds to heal, for the political fallout to settle, for the galaxy to adjust to the impossible. A human would marry into the Vaelithari imperial line. Sevron had tried everything to prevent it. Legal challenges, ancient precedents, even a formal complaint to the Galactic Council. All had failed. The Emperor, and what many whispered was the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him in decades, had personally approved the match. "It's unprecedented," Vaelith had explained, during one of the late nights they spent mapping their future. "A human has never held official standing in our court, let alone married into the royal family. But the right of salvage created a loophole. You're legally my property until I release you, which means I can do with you as I wish." Romantic. Practical. But she'd been smiling. "Though I should mention that the marriage ceremony will also be your formal release. You'll no longer be salvage. You'll be my consort. Equal standing in all things." "And your father approved this?" "My father sees what I see. A chance to change what we are. The Vaelithari have isolated ourselves for millennia, convinced our ways were superior. Look where it's brought us. A dying empire, a single heir, a court consumed by backstabbing." She'd taken his hand then. "You represent something different. A bridge to other worlds. A reminder that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty." Now, standing in the garden where their journey had truly begun, Marcus watched her approach. She wore white, not Vaelithari tradition, she'd told him, but human. A gesture of honor to his heritage. "You're crying," she murmured as she reached him. Happy tears. He took her hands. You look different? Like hope. The ceremony was brief. Vaelithari weddings focused on the exchange of vows, not elaborate ritual. But before the formal words began, Vaelith turned to address the assembled crowd. Before I bind myself to this man, I must speak a truth that has waited 15 cycles. Her voice carried across the garden, steady and clear. Many of you remember the Rift insurgency. The rescue. The human diplomat who saved my life and was executed for it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus felt his heart constrict. His name was David Cole. He was Marcus's father. And his death was not justice. It was murder, committed by a frightened girl who didn't know how to be grateful. Vaelith's voice never wavered. I have carried that guilt for 15 years. It shaped every choice I made, every failure of courage. But today, I lay it down. Not to forget, but to transform. She turned back to Marcus. I cannot undo what I did to your father. But I can honor his memory by becoming someone he would have been proud to know. I can build a future where his sacrifice means something, where kindness is not weakness, and mercy is not failure. She drew a blade from her sash, ceremonial, ancient, glittering with starlight. This blade took David Cole's life. By our tradition, it should have been destroyed. Instead, I kept it as a reminder of my shame. She offered it to Marcus. I give it to you now, not as a weapon but as a promise. Everything I am, everything I have, is yours. Use this blade or destroy it as you see fit. I trust your judgment more than my own. Marcus took the blade. It was lighter than he expected, warm in his hands. I accept it, he said slowly, as a reminder, not of death, but of transformation, of who you were and who you've become. He held it up so the assembled court could see. This blade will be placed in the memorial garden beside a new crystal, one for David Cole, the human who saved a princess and changed an empire. The silence that followed was profound. Then, from the back of the crowd, someone began to applaud. Others joined. Within moments, the garden filled with sound, not universal approval, Marcus knew, but enough. Enough to matter. Emperor Vaelithari stepped forward and the applause faded. Marcus Cole of Earth, he intoned. Do you accept responsibility for my daughter? Her life, her heart, her legacy? Vaelith of House Eternal, do you accept this human as your equal? Your partner in all things until death separates you. I do. Her voice trembled slightly, not with doubt, but with joy. Then by the authority vested in me as Emperor of the Vaelithari Dominion, I declare you bound. May your union bridge the stars. And then they were married. The reception lasted long into the night. Marcus danced with dignitaries he couldn't name, accepted congratulations from people who had wanted him dead weeks before, and somehow managed not to trip over his ceremonial robes. Through it all, Vaelith stayed close. A hand on his arm, a glance across the room, a connection that felt as natural as breathing. When the crowds finally thinned, they escaped to a balcony overlooking the garden. The memorial crystals glowed softly in the darkness, and among them, newest and brightest, was David Cole's marker. I had the inscription made this afternoon, Vaelith said quietly. I hope it's appropriate. Marcus moved closer to read it. David Cole, human. Father-daughter. Diplomat. Hero. He taught a princess that kindness isn't weakness. She finally learned. His vision blurred. It's perfect. Vaelith slipped her hand into his. Do you think he would have approved of us? I think. Marcus had to stop, swallow, continue. I think he would have said that love doesn't care about species or history or politics. That finding someone who sees you, really sees you, is the rarest thing in any galaxy. He sounds wise. He was. Marcus turned to face his wife. And I think he'd tell me not to waste time being sad when I have so much to be grateful for, such as you. Such as this impossible second chance. Such as, he pulled her close. A future I never imagined and don't deserve. We really need to work on your self-esteem. He laughed and the sound surprised him. Genuine, unguarded. Probably. But that's what marriage is for, right? Figuring things out together. She kissed him under the light of 3 moons, in a garden of memorial crystals, at the beginning of something neither of them could fully comprehend. When they parted, she was smiling. Together, she agreed. I like the sound of that. Epilogue 5 years later, Emperor Vaelithari died peacefully in his sleep. Empress Vaelith took the throne without opposition, the first female ruler in Vaelithari history. At her side stood her consort, a human whose presence in the court had become so normalized that new visitors were often startled to realize he wasn't Vaelithari at all. Their first official act was to abolish the law that had killed David Cole. No longer would rescue be punished as violation. No longer would mercy be considered weakness. The new code, drafted by Marcus and ratified by Vaelith, would become known across the galaxy as the Cole Doctrine, a recognition that sometimes the greatest courage was in breaking rules that deserve to be broken. In the memorial garden, David Cole's crystal pulsed with steady light, surrounded by flowers that bloomed in 3 colors. Some nights, when the court was quiet and their duties done, the Empress and her consort would walk among the crystals together. They would stop at David's marker, and Marcus would tell his wife stories about the father he barely remembered, fragments of memory, polished bright by love. And Vaelith would listen, her hand in his, and think about how strange the universe was. How a single act of kindness, punished so cruelly, had echoed across decades to create something beautiful. How a name remembered in grief had become a legacy of hope. How the alien princess heard his name and broke down in tears, and how the truth that came out later changed everything. The end.